G'day everyone, welcome back to another book review. Today we're going to cover the GenAI on AWS by O'Reilly. So before you go out and spend $70 in Australian dollars, and spend a week or two of your evenings reading it, stick around and see some of the things that stood out to me, and hopefully that will help you decide if it's right for you or not. So the book starts off with an introduction into prompting and the best practices around prompting. So being clear and concise, giving examples, specifying the output format, that kind of stuff. So that was a very good section. If you are interested in more about prompting and how you can get better at that, then maybe you'll be interested in this one. There's a whole book dedicated to getting the most out of your prompts. I have done another review on that, so I'll put a link to that if you want to go and have a quick look at that review. But yeah, this is another good one you should have on your bookshelf. Vectors and embeddings are the next thing that really jumped out to me in this book, and it does a really great job of explaining how these things work. So if you don't know what an embedding or a vector is, it's basically a numerical representation of any kind of data. So it could be text, it could be image, audio, anything really. And that becomes really powerful when you start playing around with multimodal models. So if you've ever got like an image and you want to do a text search for things inside that image, what it does is it takes the text that you're entering and it takes the image, it pushes both of those through a model, it gets the vector representation, so just numbers for those things, and then when they're on the level playing field, it's very easy to compare similarity across those two things. The book will explain it way better than I did. I kind of butchered that probably, but it gives you some diagrams as to how the tokenizers and transformers and so on work. And then there's a really cool diagram here which really helped me. It shows you in sort of three-dimensional space how embeddings would relate to each other. So if you had like a cat and a dog, then those two things will be very close to each other on the vector. But something like an airplane, which doesn't really relate to a cat or dog, will be much further away, and so on. So that's how you can find things that are close to each other and similarity. So jumping around a little bit, because there's some more vector stuff later in the book, it gives you a couple of options on how you would actually do this on AWS. So if you've ever played around with the Bedrock agents on AWS and you've created a knowledge base, then behind the scenes it will create some services for you, and it does actually give you an option, I believe now. So you can use OpenSearch, so that will create an OpenSearch service behind the scenes with an index and a vector store and so on. But in addition to that, you can use something like Kendra, or you can use Amazon Postgres using the pgvector plugin, and it does go into some detail later in the book about that as well. So yeah, it does a very good job of explaining embeddings and vectors, which are definitely something you need to know about. Chapter 9 was very, very good. It's a whole chapter about context-aware applications using RAG and agents. So if you've ever played around with ChatGPT, you'll notice it does have some drawbacks. So things like hallucination. So if it doesn't really know the answer, sometimes it will just make it up and it'll be very confident that it's right, but we all know that it's completely wrong. And you also have to deal with knowledge cutoff. So for example, when the latest ChatGPT comes out, this month, then next month, if you go and ask it what the football results were, it won't know, because it only knows things that it was trained on up until that point. So this chapter really digs into RAG, which is where you can provide additional context to your applications. So what you can do is you can provide it with an S3 bucket or a document store or any of those things. And that way it gets instant access to that additional information. So you might have a database of, like a parts manual or customer contacts or something like that. You can provide that to your model, and then if you need to change any of those things, you can just go and change it in your document store, and then when it gets synced, the model would know about it, so you don't have to keep retraining the model, which is really good. So yeah, there's a whole chapter on this. I think it talks about some of the tools as well, how you can get your agents to reach out to external tools. So if they need to go and look up the weather, for example, or look up the currency exchange rate, that kind of thing. But anyway, that chapter was very, very good. I definitely recommend reading that one. The next thing that stood out to me was a section on what makes up GenAI applications. So it's not just the language model, there's way more to it than that. There's a really good diagram actually in here which shows you a typical stack of the application. So you've got all sorts of things in there, like the infrastructure, the tools, the frameworks, the monitoring and logging observation layer. So this is really good to sort of give you the bigger picture of what we're building here. And there is where is it? There's another good example here that would show you what a typical application might look like. So that's good. It's good to have some examples so we know that we're going in the right direction. Lastly, there was a section at the end of the book around agents, Bedrock agents, for example. That was the main reason why I wanted to buy this book. I've been working with Bedrock agents and Strands agents and even playing with Google agents recently. And I wanted to see if I was on the right track. Am I doing the right thing? What are the experts doing? What's the difference? But to be honest, that chapter wasn't that great, just because there's not enough of it. There's less than 10 pages on agents, which isn't enough. And I don't think it's the fault of the authors. I think it's just a timing issue. I think this book was obviously written just as Bedrock agents were coming out, so they probably just didn't have that information at the time. And that's one of the drawbacks of print media, especially in AI. Things are moving way too fast, so sometimes things will miss the mark. But I do believe O'Reilly have got another book coming out soon, which is all about AI agents, so that should hopefully be much better on that topic. So there we have it, my honest and not sponsored book review. This was pretty good. I would say that if you're on AWS already and you're interested in getting into the GenAI space and seeing what that can do for you, then definitely go and pick up a copy of this book. Some people might be a bit worried about how does print media keep up with AI when things are changing every day at the moment. Whilst it is true, there are a lot of fundamentals in this book which are going to be true for some time. Things like quantization, vectors, embeddings, that stuff, that's not really going to change drastically anytime soon. So you still can get a lot of value out of this, even if you go and buy it, 6 months from now. So yeah, if this review was helpful, then please give us a thumbs up or a comment down below, and it all helps the holy YouTube algorithm. And thanks for that, and I'll see you next time.